100 years before the rise of the Empire, it is a time of peace. The Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. Today, guys, welcome to Project Geekology. We are covering, you guessed it, the Wolverine. But we have to talk about the Acolyte because that dropped the first 2 episodes recently, and that's kind of been all I've been thinking about the past 2 days, even though I literally, moments ago just finished watching The Wolverine. My name is Dakota. I'm one half of your host here at Project Geekology. And for our 84th episode, just as we have had him on for every other episode, I'm here with my good friend and yours,
Anthony. And honestly, man, you lost me there. I'm like, man, I wasn't prepared. I thought we became a Star Wars episode right then and there. I was like, oh my gosh, I watched The Wolverine, but here we are about to cover Star Wars, lost me.
Yeah. My head's been kind of stuck in that realm. I just started doing my timeline notes. I literally just started doing my timeline notes. I wrote my first literal notes on the Acolyte, the first episode, and the title crawl. We're not going to go too far into this, guys. Don't worry. But the title crawl did catch me off guard because, it's not really a crawl. They didn't really, it's not like it didn't crawl across the screen. It just kind of appeared in semi Star Wars-y font. But it says 100 years before the rise of the Empire. It is a time of peace, and that the Jedi and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. But we know they were very much at war with the Nihil in the High Republic books just 100 years before that, so it doesn't make any sense, guys. All right, don't get me wrong, I really liked the first couple episodes, but yeah, that's something that caught me off guard.
Right. Maybe if there was a little bit more of a specification, the Nihil, yes, but maybe they, not at war with the Sith or, dark side users.
It does say the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic have prospered for centuries without war. So maybe they're talking about with each other.
But
the Jedi have not fought the Galactic Republic.
They have
in over 100 years.
It's just the Jedi, man. They're always trying to fight the Republic. And the Republic, they just can't stand the Jedi.
Yeah. I guess before we jump into our main topic of discussion, which is the Wolverine. Anthony, how did you like the first 2 episodes? I mean, I'm assuming you watched them?
I did.
Yeah.
As soon as they dropped, I watched them. I enjoyed it. It's been getting reviewed bomb online,
which was expected.
Right. Obviously any show, especially with, Star Wars of late, it's going to be heavily scrutinized. There's no perfection. But the same thing could be said of the original trilogy, man. Nothing in Star Wars is perfect. Is some of it sloppy? Yes. And I'm not talking about the show in particular, but I'm talking about, some Star Wars media in general is better than the others. Of course it is. And like you said, you kind of pointed out something that you didn't like. Obviously it's not perfect, but I did enjoy it. There is definitely something different about it. It kind of, to me, it's a little bit of a fresh breath of air. Kind of like Andor. Andor was different, and that's what I like about this show. It's got, obviously it has Jedi in it. Andor wasn't really all about the Jedi and stuff, but this one is, it's really cool, man. I definitely want to cover this show at one point when it finishes. Obviously, maybe my thoughts of it will change as the show progresses, but so far I enjoy it. How about you?
I will say it's a strong start. There's very little within the first 2 episodes that I dislike. And I feel like if you are disliking it, you're looking for reasons to.
Yes.
It doesn't, there's no blatant reason for you to dislike this show at this point, you
came in looking, yeah.
You had
one of those people looking for a fight,
You had to come in looking to pick it apart, to dislike this. If you're honestly coming at this with the intentions to either, just appreciate the art that's being presented to you, it's fun. It's entertaining. I laughed quite a few times. There was one line where there's a character that's being surrounded by Jedi, and one of the Jedi goes, "Who is he?" referring to some guy this person was like speaking to, and he turned around and looked at one of the other Jedi, and he goes, "I thought he was with you." I just very juxtapositionally funny. Like, it was just a great line. There's stuff like that in it that I'm really enjoying, and I think the characters are going to be really appreciated as time goes on. Because I do like that it's like kind of like a murder mystery, even though you know who the murderer is. It's more like learning about the intent behind the murder at this point.
Right, and then we'll talk more about it. I don't want to talk about any like huge plot points or anything, but you know, the reveal of the murderer was definitely like pretty cool. I thought that was, you know, to be vague, I thought that was pretty cool how they went about that.
Yeah. So there's a lot to enjoy from the first 2 episodes, and I've heard that it gets significantly better with episodes 3 and 4 because certain press people have already gotten access to that. So nice. It's gonna be an 8-episode series. So we'll see in 7 weeks. It's gonna be a grueling 7 weeks. Let's be honest, just because the Star Wars fandom hates itself. Menace. Yeah, they hate themselves.
So I mean, okay. So kind of moving on from that. Like I said, we'll definitely have to make an episode about that. We usually kind of start off with what I've been up to, but how about you? What have you been up to, Dakota? Tell us, enlighten us.
Well, you heard, I don't know if you heard about it, but they just released a new Star Wars show. It's the first 2 episodes of a new Star Wars show. So I watched that, and then I watched it again. But
never heard of it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time. No, I have been really excited about that, and I'm excited to talk about that on the show some more at some point. But at the same time the same day rather, that the Acolyte dropped on Disney Plus, a Star Wars game also released, and we spoke about it briefly. Were you able to get your hands on it at all?
Yeah, I was able to get my hands on it. This game is very odd with compatibility, especially with mobile phones. A lot of games usually, I feel like when it comes to something huge like Star Wars, even like with Blizzard, when it comes to releasing something on a mobile platform, they're usually pretty good with releasing it on almost any device, but doesn't work on my phone. Doesn't, like, I have one of the fold phones, and even some of the it's like it works on mostly like older devices, like some newer devices, but like, dude, it's very finicky. But it's also on the Switch, so that's what I got it on. I have it on the Switch. I've been playing it a little bit. It definitely has that mobile phone aspect to it. It feels like a mobile game.
Yeah, there's certain control aspects that are very simplistic for the sake of, you know, you're meant to play this on a device without buttons, basically, like a touchscreen sort of thing. But
right. It's with something that's not tactile.
We haven't actually even said the name of the game yet, so we've been talking about this for 2 minutes. I'm sorry, folks. We're talking about Star Wars Hunters. It's a game that has been on the horizon for a couple years at this point.
It's been a while, dude. Like,
I thought it was already out. I thought it was already out, to be honest with you, because a whole year ago, I read the tie-in book that was supposed to come out with this game, and I just assumed that the game was already out, and I just didn't care for it. But no, Star Wars Hunters is a kind of like arena-esque multiplayer mashup sort of thing. Takes a lot of cues from Overwatch and that type of gameplay, where you don't start out with all the heroes like you would with Overwatch, but you start with 1 or 2 heroes, and as you level up, as you progress through the game, more unlock as you go along. And I found that it's really fun, and there's a definite like skill ramp to it, like understanding where the hitboxes are like strongest, you know. So with this game, I've played maybe like 20 rounds.
Okay, so you actually hopped on to play.
I have, yeah. I've over the past couple of days, I've played quite a few matches, and I've won most of them. I think I've only lost 2 games out of the 20 or so that I played.
Same.
And it's pretty easy. it's easy to jump on. Like, you don't have to have a lot of gaming experience. I don't play all that many games these days, but honestly, I had the highest score on most of the matches. It's just a matter of like aiming at the person that you're trying to shoot at,
right?
And the game fires for you.
Oh, okay. So you're playing on your phone.
I am. Oh,
okay. So on the Switch, it's a little bit more conventional where you're pressing buttons. So you actually have to like press to shoot and all that stuff. And
now, are you playing against other Switch players, or are you playing against mobile?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's crossplay. I'm assuming that I'm playing against other Switch players.
Yeah.
And I mean you're right about the jumping on. It is fairly easy to hop on. I am also, I think that there's been like a couple games where I didn't have the highest score, and that was because I was trying out somebody new.
Right, yeah.
And actually, believe it or not, I made it to the point to where I was playing the ranked mode.
Oh, cool. Okay, I haven't gotten
I played a few ranked matches.
I haven't gotten
and that's definitely where it starts to the skill curve definitely starts to go up. You start fighting against people who are either close in your ability, or like, a little worse or a little bit better.
Okay, but like you notice a skill bump from the people around you. Okay,
definitely.
Cool.
I'm definitely, depending on who I'm playing, because I try to. I'm usually a flex player when it comes to a lot of games like that. I look to see who the other people pick, and then I try to choose off of that. So if we already have like a couple tanks and a couple damage, I'll hop on like somebody that's support, or vice versa. So usually, like if I'm hopping on like one of the DPS, especially like that Imperial Gunner guy is like super OP.
Sentinel, yeah.
Super, super OP. Like, I'm always like destroying whenever I play him.
and then
on like the losses, like one of the losses that I've had, I played as him and I was like the best player in the whole match.
Yeah, so even like his ultimate is just OP because he calls in two other stormtroopers to fire alongside him, and they don't go away unless you kill them. Like, he can die and they'll still be on the map.
It's like, so crazy.
It's OP, yeah. But it's a really fun game, guys. Obviously, we're not sponsored by anyone at Lucasfilm or anything like that, but we're having a really good time with it. And
although we're open to it,
Yeah, Lucasfilm.
I mean, it was like we talk enough about Star Wars on here.
Yeah.
But
promise you guys, we're not shills. We're not Disney shills, even though we do cover a lot of Disney. Oh no. Yeah, what else have I been up to? I don't think I've been up to all that much since we last spoke. Yeah, I think that's like actually all I really wanted to talk about. What have you been up to, bro?
So you talked about, we talked about Star Wars Hunters. I obviously have been playing a bit of that and watching Wolverine, but I've also been working on that website. The last episode we talked about how I really wanted to build a proper website for the podcast, and honestly, it's coming along pretty decently. Like, because like I was like, one of my biggest fears when it came to learning this, I was like, man, what if I'm like, hopping onto this and like I'm just, like I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, and like for the most part, like I know that like a time will come where I'm like, what am I don't know what to do, like
over your head.
What's happening. But I know that I have, a sufficient amount of training to where, if something is not working for me in that moment, I just take a step back, breather, kind of approach it in a different way, or work on some other aspect of the website and then come back to it later. But for the most part, like this first iteration is not going to be some crazy out of the park.
It's a test, almost.
It's right. This is really more of like, I'm testing myself, seeing where I can, where my strengths are, what I can work on better, and and trying to figure out what I want to add, like things. I'm trying to think of different aspects. I'm trying to add a thing to where if somebody wants to, send a message to us, it'll send to our email, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so I'm adding stuff like that. I have like a whole episode page that I want to like limit the amount of episodes that are on that page, so that it's not like that one page isn't overloaded with like, say that we're hitting over 100, 200 episodes. It's not like a one giant page of like 200 episodes. Like I want to be like, 10 episodes on one page, and then it's got like a next button, that kind of thing.
Okay. Like you scroll and then more pop up if you keep scrolling, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that not everything loads at the same time.
Right.
Interesting.
So yeah, that, I have a lot of ideas, things that I wanted to like look into. And, like just working on it a little bit at a time. Sometimes I spend maybe, around like maybe 40-ish minutes. Sometimes I'm spending longer, like I'll just be kind of chilling, and I'm like, man, you know what? I kind of feel like working on it a little bit. So I'll spend a little bit of time working on little tweaks here and there, and, figuring things out. So I've had a few moments where I'm like, man, like, why is this not working? And I'll look into the code, I'll mess with things, and then I get it to work. So
awesome.
I'm really like working on that problem solving aspect of web development, because I feel like I can problem solve with a lot of other things, but with web development it's different, because it's like, say that you're trying to, communicate in Spanish with somebody, and you're like, I don't know how to say this. So you kind of figure out a way to communicate because of that language barrier. It's like a language barrier.
Yeah.
And I'm learning as I go. So, I've learned the gist of a lot of what I need, but still, it's like now I have to put my reps in. I have to actually practice it. So this has been practice for me.
That's awesome,
it's been
bro.
good, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And actually, I forgot to mention, that's actually something I have been working on. I mean, you have the web design stuff. I have like the timeline stuff that I'm working on, especially with the Star Wars graphic that I was working on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm officially calling it, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but I'm officially calling it the Star Wars Time Saber. And it's basically like a big lightsaber that kind of weaves into a large timeline. And
right. Isn't it going to be featured in the Acolyte?
I think so. Yeah. Lucasfilm. Wink, wink, hint, hint.
And the inspiration for the lightsaber whip,
Yes. If they do not credit me, I will get in touch with my lawyers. And no, I'm just kidding. But I did make a lot of progress. There were two parts to the timeline that I felt were most daunting. And I crossed one of those thresholds. I was able to finally figure out how I wanted to place the Clone Wars episodes. So instead of going...
Because they're kind of out of order.
There's a lot of them that are out of order.
Yeah.
So I kind of separated it, like there's a section of the timeline that's 22 BBY, 21, 20, 19, and that's all kind of... bracketed by Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So it was a matter of, spreading those years out to a point where I could feasibly put enough little markers, because there's not only episodes of the Clone Wars in there. There's, episodes of the children's animated shorts, Forces of Destiny. There's episodes of both Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire mixed in there. There's comic books, there's novels, there's a bunch of other stuff that actually happens in the Clone Wars. So yeah, it was just a matter of figuring out a way to not have to literally pinpoint every single episode, but if I could do it in chunks, say if episodes 3 through 7 of season 3 of the Clone Wars were all, concurrent, or there wasn't anything that happened in between those episodes, I would chunk it all together, and I would do something like that. So that was a huge thing for me in terms of trying to figure out how to do that, just because it could also get really messy, and I've had timelines that I've had to just kind of abandon because they get messy, or projects, like especially in Photoshop, when I'm doing big graphics like that, if I don't have a vision in mind, it kind of all falls apart. So I'm happy that so far I've gotten a really good portion of the timeline completed. And the second thing that I'm really worried about is the time period between during the original trilogy. Marvel has released so many comic books. So many comic books. Hundreds and hundreds of issues of comic books. Just between, in the year that takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there's got to be 200 comic books in that gap. So I need to figure out a rough order to place everything in. And I'm not doing like if I go like issue by issue, it's going to take forever. So I'm chunking it by like collected volumes, basically. So 4 or 5 issues were collected in volume 5. 4 or 5 issues are collected in volume 6 of this and that and this. Because there's the Star Wars line, there's the Darth Vader line, there's the Bounty Hunters line, there's the Dr. Aphra line, and they all kind of fold into each other's like narrative. So it's going to be that's probably the section that I'm most worried about, like trying to figure out how to place. But I'll figure it out when I get to it. Next week, I'll probably talk about it.
Did you read the comics?
I've read a good portion. So no, I didn't read all of them. So I'm gonna have to do some research. I'm using. There's a website called Youtini, Youtini, that is a fantastic timeline resource. And they have a general timeline for pretty much every item in the Star Wars canon. I don't agree with every one of their placements, but as a general guide, I think that they're super spot on and super helpful. So I'm using that as a template. And if I have differences in opinions of like where certain things take place, like in conjunction to one another, I'll just shift it around a little bit on my timeline. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing for the comics. So I've read a lot of them, but I've probably
That's too many.
In that section of the timeline, I've probably only read about 30% of them.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's just a lot. But anyway.
It's funny that you say Youtini, because that's the name of the Jawa, the like Jawa duo from Star Wars Hunter.
Utini, yeah.
Utini, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a play on like the Jawa Utini, So that's cool. Yeah, if you guys want to check that site out, they do a really good job with the Star Wars timeline. If that is interesting you at all, but
that's definitely interested me. I've always wondered where there was a pretty good timeline, because I want to kind of like look at like where things are placed, and it's hard. Like there's so much information everywhere. And yeah, people move. There's like just some are complete, some are incomplete, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I don't know where.
Yeah, there's no. Well, I would say that's probably the best option. That and kind of balancing that with like Wikipedia's dating structures is pretty interesting. And on Utini's site, there's a way for you to filter what you're looking at. So on the top left of like, if you go to their timeline section, there's a filter button on the top left of the screen that you can click, and you can say, I want to look at novels, junior novels, and comics. Or you can choose films, TV episodes, and video games, or any number of that filtering system. And it'll tell you, like, if you're not interested in any of the comics per se, you can filter those out completely, or any of the anthologies. And it's a really, really good resource. Like I'm really impressed with it. And I've talked to the guy who runs the Utini timeline, and he's a cool dude, and he's excited for the project that I'm making right now. So I love that kind of like love within the fandom that like kind of just spreads around. So yeah. Anyway, that's
what site was that again? Like how did the URL go?
Youtini.
Okay.
If you look up Utini Star Wars timeline, yeah,
you can't see nothing, but I'm pretty sure I found it.
Yeah. Whenever Anthony points the phone at the camera, it's just a white screen.
Dude, it's just a white screen.
And I know that he found it. Like, I could see it in his face. Like, yeah, I got it.
But, I mean, for those of you that are interested in checking that out, we can always put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Guys, you know what time it is? It's halfway through our
Adventure
podcast. Yes, it's time for us to talk about Adventure Time. No, it's time for us to talk about the Wolverine.
Dude, you just love saying it in that way.
I cannot stop. So I think it's if I remember correctly, that's how they announced his entrance into the ring in the first movie, like in that when we first see him in the bar, you know, like when he's like in that cage.
The Wolverine.
I need to go back. I remember them announcing him, but I don't remember how they said it.
Yeah, they gave it like one of those like wrestling type introductions. And I have that burned into my head. So whenever I see the Wolverine, I have to read it out like that. But anyway, this came out in 2013. This is a film that is probably one of the more interesting ones.
Yes.
Of the series, because while I don't think it's as good as Logan, obviously, is a good film. Like it's hard to deny that this is a good film, and I think it's aged pretty well.
I was gonna say it's definitely a lot better than the first Wolverine movie that we got.
And it's funny because they could have said Wolverine 2. They could have called it that, but instead this has got to be like the most disjointed trilogy of solo films ever, like, because they're all the same actor and everything, but they have no connective tissue to each other. You know, Logan has no connective tissue to the first two Wolverine solo films. This has no connection to any of the other ones, but I think that's kind of like a cool thing about Logan, is that he has lived so long and he's touched so many people in terms of like who he saved and who he hasn't, that he can do solo adventures and they could be totally standalone and they could be totally cool.
Yeah. This was, I'm glad that you said that, because I remember seeing this a while ago, and I don't remember it grabbing me as much as it did this time around. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, like, why do I not remember this being as good as it is, you know? Like you said, it's not like a Logan. Like, Logan is, out of all the Wolverine movies, that's like the top one. But this one was, man, I was like, wow, it was just like really cool. You have Wolverine in Japan, and I love that they call him Wolverine in Japanese.
We'll be back after a quick break.
What's up, cinephiles? I'm Nicholas Ibarra.
And I'm Bella of Stratus.
And we want to tell you about the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles. A show in which we pick 3 films based on one theme.
That's right. 3 films, one theme, like Gimme 3 movie musicals.
Gimme 3 Michelle Pfeiffer films.
Gimme 3 Pixar films.
Gimme 3 reasons why you shouldn't listen to our show. That's not an episode, that's just a legitimate question.
The Gimme 3 podcast is not just about expanding your watch list, it's about saving you precious time when you're endlessly scrolling through your streaming apps. So take 3 seconds and subscribe to the Gimme 3 podcast, a series for cinephiles.
Wait, is what was the name? Kitsuri or something like that?
Yeah, that means Wolverine in Japanese.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay, that's really cool.
I looked it up. I was like, I was like, what's the significance of this name? The guy that he had known from World War II called him that, and so did like the love interest of the story had called him that too. And I was like, okay, what is that? What does that mean? Like, is there significance? And yeah, it means Wolverine. It's literally Wolverine in Japanese.
Interesting. Okay. So what did you like that they, brought the story over to Japan?
Oh, absolutely. It's super. I thought it was super cool because you're taking a character that really is all about brute force and coming up against an enemy that it's not always about brute force. It's sometimes coming, from the shadows, or from a place that you cannot, you can't be spotted. And obviously it's Wolverine, there's Wolverine's always going to have plot armor unless unless you're watching Logan, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I thought that the setting was awesome. I mean, look, I'm an otaku. I love anime. I'm a gamer. I play a lot of like JRPGs and stuff. So, as far as like the nerdy aspect of Japan, I definitely love that. And some of the culture is really, really cool. So, dude, put them in that setting. I'm game to watch, man. What about you? What are your thoughts on that move over to Japan?
Sorry, I was looking something up while you were saying that, but I do agree. It's so funny. You were mentioning earlier about how like the movie didn't necessarily grab you when you first watched it, but watching it now, you almost miss this kind of action movie, if that makes any kind of sense. It feels like the early, it feels like a film that would like work within the Iron Man trilogy in a way. The way that the pacing and everything is structured, the kind of side mission that they send the Wolverine on, it all feels very akin to an Iron Man movie. And I'm not even like trying to say that, like because they had a big guy in an armor suit at the end has anything to do with that. That literally just popped into my head as I was talking about Iron Man comparisons.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. It was like Obadiah or something like that in that giant armor suit. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, I would actually say it's probably closest to Iron Man 3. But what's funny is that this movie came out in the same year as Iron Man 3. And it came out a year after the Avengers. And there's actually, I feel like, it's interesting, like going and looking at these movies and seeing how they're influenced by the other films in the genre outside of their company. And I do think that at this point they were being heavily influenced by the MCU because this felt more like an MCU movie, especially when it came to the tease at the end.
Oh yeah. The tease for the next movie that we'll be watching.
It definitely they had a very Nick Fury-esque, like we're building a team sort of moment. Even though it was like characters we already knew who had a lot of history with each other. So the post or the mid-credits scene has Wolverine going through an airport for some reason. I don't know. Yeah, we don't actually even get that explained. Like, why was he in an airport? And for some reason, Magneto is moving metal behind him, and he turns around and he's just like, "You're not alone," or something. And like Professor X stops time for everyone in the room and just like, "You're not the only one with special abilities," or something like that. It was really bizarre. It's like a really stunted dialogue for a kind of cool scene that's very much hinting at the future because they mentioned there's a Trask logo.
Right,
earlier in the
it's
movie,
like an ad.
I believe there's a Trask logo earlier in the movie, but also it shows up again at the end of this, and it kind of leads into the events of Days of Future Past, which would be the next movie. And I'm really, really excited to cover that one because I remember really loving that movie when it came out.
I did too, and it's cool. Like I'm actually really happy that we're going from a movie that we like. Like I said, like I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was good. Going into another really, really good one,
Yeah, I would actually like argue that this is kind of on par with. I don't know in my head if I would place First Class above X-Men 2, X2, but it's on that level of storytelling. At least not if it's not storytelling, it's on that level of just enjoyment, like while I'm watching it. I was never like bored throughout the entire movie. Like it kept my engagement while taking me all over to Japan. We went to a love hotel, guys.
Seriously, like it really like kept my attention, and like I was like, I was thinking like, oh, I'll probably watch a bit of it today, and then come back and finish it tomorrow. But dude, like now I was like, I watched it all in one sitting because I thought it was like, I enjoyed it. Like I was enjoying my time watching this movie.
So I do have a criticism. I have a couple criticisms. Just like, I think it's kind of fun poking holes in the plot, and I'm gonna do that for this one. So early in the movie, we have Wolverine. He's kind of like been like shoved into a well or something with like a blast door on top, and he is a prisoner at some World War II camp. He somehow, even though he was stuck in a hole for who knows how long, he knew about the bombing in Hiroshima, and he also knew like what kind of plane was used. So here's the thing: how would he know that? How would he? Because he goes, "You better get in here. That was a B-29. You know what that means." How would any of those soldiers know what that means? Like it's not. Yes, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not super far away, but like the specifics of like what kind of plane flew over.
So you can explain that like, at that time, at the war, at that time in the war, Japan and the US had been fighting for a long time, and Japan had been bombed like times prior to that. Obviously like the smaller islands were shelled by ships, but they were also bombed at some point. And the military, like a lot of the people in the military, they knew like, oh, those are P-51s, so a lot of people could spot a bomber. Bombers usually fly higher, whereas P-51s will fly a little bit lower. So, Logan, I can imagine that Logan would know that that's a bomber, and he knows what that means. Maybe he didn't know that was a nuke, but I could imagine like that they would know what a bomber is. Japan, they have their own bombers,
Right.
So they would be able to, like, that's easy to explain. Now, they wouldn't have known that was a nuke on there because that was the first time anybody had experienced anything like that. So that would explain like the reaction to that blast.
Right.
But they knew that there were, now I don't know.
Hiroshima was bombed 3 days prior to this, on the 6th. This is the 9th. And my issue is like, how would Wolverine, who has presumably been in prison for a while, know what kind of bomber they used in another city and what happened to that city, or even understand what a nuclear explosion is in the first place? So that's kind
right.
of
So did he know that it was a nuke? Like,
it's implied.
He just knew that, he knew that it was a bomber, and who knows, like, maybe he understood enough, maybe he picked up some Japanese. I don't know. Like, I'm suspending disbelief at this point. But
yeah, no, you're being the better critic than I am. I'm being a little too picky, probably.
But so I definitely understand where you're coming from that, but I could imagine, like, he would know what a bomber is. At least he would know at least that that's about to drop a bomb. How strong? Probably not.
Right.
But he would know that like, okay, that's a bomber. He would know what a bomber is. Like, the army knew the people in the army, they knew the model of aircraft. They were able to call out P-51s. The various bombers, so, and some of the people in the army were, you had you had the airborne who jumped out of planes, so they would know models of planes. I'm getting crazy, like, deep into military history right now.
That's true. Yeah.
But
no, you're right.
But like, okay. So obviously with all the time that he has spent in war throughout the years, he would have picked up. But as far as knowing that was a nuke, probably not.
Because he shows, even though the plane is like way past them at that point, it's going into, over the actual city of Nagasaki. he knows that something bad is happening or is going to happen. So he breaks out of his little confinement, drags the guy to the well, and, saves his life, which is actually a super cool scene. And seeing how he, kind of withstood all the radiation burns and stuff for this guy, only for the guy to turn out to be a jerk, big jerk. Spoilers, sorry guys.
Right. Yeah. Did you want to like go briefly over kind of like
the premise of the movie for those of you who may have forgotten? Yeah. So we have, a modern day Wolverine. I don't know that they have like any like present day years or, like what it's hard to tell like what year exactly this is, but it's, 2010s maybe. Yeah. Where Wolverine is kind of just living on his own in the woods. And he's picked up by a Japanese girl and basically told that, hey, this guy that you saved back in Nagasaki in World War II, he's dying and he wants to say goodbye to you. So he gets shipped over to Japan to say goodbye to this guy who he, probably forgot about at this point. And the guy apparently has created a $1 billion industry, like a tech industry, and he's got like the biggest company in all of Japan. And he kind of whispers to Wolverine like, hey, I know what your greatest wish is, and it's to die. Well, my greatest wish is to live. What if you trade your powers and save an old man so that I can continue my legacy? And Wolverine's kind of like, wow, that's kind of a dick thing to do. Why would you do that? Why would you tell me that? Yeah, and long story short, he doesn't do that, but it's kind of like forced upon him where like his powers are revoked. And here's something that I really like about this movie. How do you make a character who is invincible interesting? Well, you give them a weakness, and they literally gave him a weakness. He can now be weakened. And I like that about the film. There's a good portion of the film where he does not have his ability to heal. And that presents an obstacle he's never had to face before. And that was really fascinating. Another issue, stemming from that I had before I go back to the plot summary is if he had no healing powers, then whenever he like extended his claws and retracted them, would there still be holes in his hand? Because those can't heal anymore, right? He'd just be bleeding out of his hands forever.
Yeah. Maybe they weren't thinking about it in that terms, but yeah, no. It was interesting though that how they used it was like a biotic like little like robot in the body that was kind of messing with him around his heart, and that was messing with his healing factor. It's like that thing that they sucked out of Neo's belly button in The Matrix. It kind of had that like parasite. I don't know the actual name for it, but you can kind of picture it like in like a biology context, like what those parasites, like the walking viruses look like. But anyway, so going back to the crux of the story, apparently this guy's dying wish, even though it wasn't really his dying wish, was to pass the whole company over to Noriko, his granddaughter, because she was worthy. And that's a fun sentiment and all. But he was never intending to die, and he even like kept that information from her. So even though that was in his will to like pass the legacy of his brand off onto his granddaughter, he was still technically alive. So I don't even understand like the farce. Like, what was the point of the whole farce? I mean, I get it. Like, it's to suspend disbelief in the audience so that you can follow the mystery and understand what's going on over the course of it. But yeah, like I said, guy turned out to be a jerk. And he stole, or, he was trying to forcibly steal Logan's powers through the help of some girl who had like viper venom mutant powers. Right. I mean, that's literally like her name, Viper. Viper in comics. But also, I mean, we also have to talk about. I mean, it's hard to imagine a movie being bad when you have your boy Hiroyuki Sanada. Yeah, he's in everything. Anything Japanese. Anything Japanese, but it's usually like really good. Like he's in that show, The Shogun. I haven't checked it out yet, but I've heard good things. It's good. I haven't finished it, but from what I've seen, it's really, really good. Cool. Yeah, that's definitely on my list.
And he plays the father of Noriko, who wants the legacy of, I believe the brand name is Yoshida, if I remember correctly. I might be incorrect there, but his father's dying. He really wants his father's company, and it's all going to the daughter. So he kind of goes crazy and sends the Yakuza after his own daughter to kill her because, he's crazy and power hungry, and doesn't actually learn a lesson by the end of the film. He just dies at the hands of Wolverine. Even though he tries to teach him a lesson. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but I'm having a fun time kind of like remembering the little snippets of the story here and there. But anyway, dude was stockpiling I forget who the actual main villain and or guy he helped in Nagasaki was called. Bro was like stockpiling adamantium, like left and right. He had a whole samurai suit of adamantium created for himself to extend his life.
I'm trying to see. I'm trying to see what his name was. The older guy. I mean, it was. You can keep on talking. I'm sorry. I just want to let you know what I was doing.
No, yeah, figure that out because I'm just gonna be talking into the void at this point because I actually do want to know. I should have, guys. Usually, here's a trade secret. We usually have a cast list of whoever's in the cast at the ready whenever we have a podcast going, so that we can actually break down these things with some level of sense and merit. But and in this podcast, we're kind of just winging it because we really liked it, and I think
we did. Yeah, his name was Ichiro Yashida.
Okay,
Ichiro Yashida.
Yashida. So so he had the Yoshida brand, and he was stockpiling adamantium. He made himself basically a silver samurai outfit out of adamantium. And
I think that's what he's actually called, Silver Samurai.
That is his comic book character name.
Yeah.
I don't really understand his relationship to Viper or his relationship to the Black Clan, which was like the clan of ninjas, and or Viper's relationship to Noriko's father. I don't know. It was kind of like a wide web of characters that all kind of wanted something, but we never really learned every person's desire. Like the guy that Noriko was originally in love with was like the leader of the Black Clan ninjas.
What was it? Well, so Ichiro did actually say something about the Black Clan.
Yeah.
That and like his village had a connection like in the past.
That is true.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah, they've protected that village for like I think 700 years or something like that. So yeah, you're right about that. But again, like I didn't fully grasp what everyone's connection to each other was, besides like we're the villains until we're not, sort of thing. But I did think that the final fight was cool. I was a little confused how Wolverine's bone claws didn't immediately grow back when he like got his adamantium claws snipped off, but
he did. He was able to use them.
He was, but it wasn't immediate. Like it was basically after the guy sawed into or like bored into his bone claws and extracted his little DNA to like make himself young again. After that point, the claws did grow back, but he basically had to retract them and then send them back out.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if that's like a. I mean, I don't know if that's part of the healing or I mean, if he can heal with them still out.
What I did find funny was that for Wolverine to use and activate like the heat portion of the adamantium sword, he needed 2 hands, but the Silver Samurai only needed 1 because like he was holding him down and with one hand and like slicing with the other. So I thought that was pretty funny. Like it was just like kind of inconsistent, but also kind of a cool callback to the like what he learned back in World War II.
Well, maybe because I don't know. Maybe it could have been a weight issue thing.
Oh, I kind of like that.
The Silver Samurai is this like giant adamantium like armor, and so would be able to withstand the weight of that. I can imagine like those weapons were like solid adamantium. So I mean, you remember when he sinks or when Lady Deathstrike gets injected with the adamantium and she sinks to the bottom of that pool, it kind of makes like a loud like clinking sound.
Yeah. So one character that I totally forgot was in this movie that is definitely worth talking about is only present through dream sequences and I guess like memory, and that's Jean Grey, played by Famke Janssen. And what a fantastic role! Like it was so, you know, she was just there to be his subconscious or to talk to his subconscious. You know, I guess a big thing for him was that he wanted to die. He wanted to be with Jean Grey. It's the person that he loved most in you know, the life that he's led, as far as we're aware. And it's interesting that he, like, his subconscious actually, you know, created a version of Jean to like dream of, you know, what life would be like after death, you know, for him. Do you believe that he was actually talking or like communing with the past life or like the soul of or spirit of Jean Grey, or do you think that was more in his head?
I believe that was more in his head.
I think so too.
Because of the whole romantic aspect of it.
They never really got that far in the
Right.
X-Men trilogy. Yeah, you're right. And by the end of the film, when he realizes that, no, I actually don't want to die just yet. You know, he's just like, no, I don't want to die just yet. I just found a Japanese girl, so I'm gonna hold off on that for a bit. He did mention like guilt in having, you know, she kind of brings up how he put her to death, basically, in the third X-Men movie. That's clearly guilt on his part manifesting in this dream sequence. So I really liked that part of the film because it grounded the character, even more so, I feel, than, you know, him being removed from his powers.
I agree. Yeah. No, it's definitely one of the more interesting aspects of the film, and I think it is a really good like driving force, especially when that unique situation or that unique proposition was presented to Wolverine of like, hey, look, you don't want your long life. I don't mind taking off your hands. And, you know, he's been kind of toying with it already throughout his life, you know, since the whole Jean Grey thing.
What do you think about his love interest with Noriko? I say this because in our coverage of X-Men Origins Wolverine, I mentioned that I kind of liked his love interest. I felt it was a little, like, it was genuine in that movie. But I never really got, like, it felt a little bit forced to me in this one. Because for a good portion of the movie, I didn't see them as compatible. And I don't think that they were ever intending for that to be the case. I mean, not the filmmakers, but like, you know, these two characters, Logan and Noriko. Especially because she's the granddaughter of this guy that he's, you know, previously friends with. And he kind of, I think for a good portion of the film, not that he treats her like a daughter, but he does treat her like someone needing protection from others, you know, kind of like a damsel in distress sort of thing. And I wasn't a huge fan of the love interest. I don't know. I didn't like that aspect of it. I kind of wished it remained, you know, just a protector and this girl trying to make her way through life.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. I guess they like needed to add a love interest aspect of it, but I feel like if there could have been one, it could have been the other. Oh my gosh, what was her name? Yukio. Like, I feel like it could have been closer to that because they had already been like, she had introduced herself. It was almost like the classic like setup as far as that she went out to retrieve him, she brought him, she was more of like she had more of like the caring, like, hey, you know, I can foresee people's deaths, and she was very concerned with him, like she didn't want him to go and get himself killed. So I felt like if there would have been a romantic aspect, that would have been maybe the choice for this film.
I agree with that. I kind of prefer that to what we got.
They're a little bit more compatible because she is an actual like fighter, you know. Not saying that a fighter and a non-fighter can't be together, but there was that chemistry, the on-screen chemistry that made sense.
And what's funny is that Noriko had 2 other potential love interests in this movie, with like her fiance, who was like a big time politician who turned out to be not the best guy ever, and the leader of the Black Clan. I don't remember his name either, but you know what I'm saying. Like they even had like both of those characters were kind of betrothed to her at some point in their lives. And it was interesting that like she still chose Logan and kind of like left the relationship open at the end of the movie. Like I know we're never going to see that ever play out on screen again, but I thought it was interesting. You know, like what a choice.
Call me when you come back to Japan, or if you come back to Japan.
Yeah, I was just like, what did she say? It was something like, "Will I be seeing you soon?" And I spoke straight to the screen. I'm like, no.
and then also actually another thing to reinforce the romance between him and Yukio was that she actually left with him at the end.
Yes, I don't think she shows up in any other movies, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's
she's
just
like, I am the bodyguard for literally for like for 5 minutes. And
what's funny is that like she takes him onto a private plane, and then the post-credit scene is him in an airport trying to get through to a plane. Like, why couldn't she, the bodyguard, like take him wherever he needed to go? Like, I know it's not the same time period, obviously. Some time has passed,
right.
But
I mean, it was like it said 2 years later. But
oh, you're right. It did say that. Yes.
It said so. But the thing is that like technically, I mean, I don't know. Did something happen? Like, because if she was still around him, she could have done that still. You know, got him on a plane to go somewhere else. She had the hookup.
He probably woke up in his sleep and stabbed her like he always does.
I know, like that
man
is always trying to. Yeah,
he has a problem with that. Like,
he almost did that to your girl.
My girl. Yeah, he almost did that to my girl. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here for our 84th episode covering the Acolyte. We're very... sorry.
The Wolverine.
The Wolverine. Yeah. That's actually what we covered. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here. We enjoy talking. We enjoy talking about the stuff we love and the stuff we don't love very much. But next week, I have a feeling we will enjoy the conversation quite a bit, just like we enjoyed the conversation today. And we're going to be covering X-Men Days of Future Past, right? Like, that is the next one.
Days of Past Futures.
Hold on, let me just double check. List of...
I think you're right.
X-Men movies in release order. Because that's what we're going by.
And I think after that, we get our first Deadpool movie.
Dude, yes. Yeah, so it's the Wolverine, then X-Men Days of Future Past, and then Deadpool. We can finally...
Talk about Deadpool.
The actual Deadpool, not just the guy who got his mouth sewn shut.
Same actor, though.
In a surprising turn of events, turns out he did turn out to be a great Wade Wilson or Deadpool. Guys, thank you so much. Please be sure to find all links to our show notes. Wait, not our show notes. Our socials in the show notes, whether that be for the podcast itself or our personal socials, whether it be YouTube, TikTok. We're not on TikTok. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's late. I'm struggling here. I'm losing the plot. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. You're on Twitch. You can find us. You can go to the show notes down below. You'll see.
Look for the links to the show notes.
Yes, and maybe you will find a link to the UTNE Star Wars timeline down there. Guys, Anthony, any final thoughts on the Wolverine?
Yes, I give it 2 thumbs up because I actually enjoyed it.
I'll give it 2 thumbs up as well. And I'm also raising my toe thumb, my big toe.
3.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
The Wolverine.